Hi, I'm Anna Pingel. I am the Policy Campaign Director for the Secure American Elections campaign at the America First Policy Institute. And I'm here today with EAC Election Assistance Commission Commissioner, Christy McCormick. So welcome to the studios.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yep. So we're going to have a bit of a conversation about kind of the role of the EAC, what resources they offer, what they can do, and what they've been doing under the current administration. So we'll start out with what has the EAC been doing to support election security under this current administration?
So the first thing we're doing is we're attempting to comply with President Trump's executive order. That came out last March. There were a number of things that specifically named the EAC in the order, things that we could do to help, and we're working on doing that. We have other statutes that we have to comply with, as well as the executive order. So, for example, in the Help America Vote Act, it gives us a specific process that we have to follow in order to make changes to what we call the Voluntary Voting Systems Guidelines. And those are the guidelines that are set to test and certify all of the voting systems in the country. I mean, it is still voluntary, but I would say probably 40 to 45 states in some way or another comply with our guidelines. So we have assembled our Technical Guidelines Development Committee to update those guidelines in compliance with the order. For example, removing barcodes off of the ballots, and so that was one thing that President Trump had put in his order. I don't think that's a hugely controversial move, but our Technical Guidelines Development Committee is sort of taking the position that they don't want to comply with necessarily the executive order as an independent agency. Some people believe that we shouldn't take orders from the White House, but we've always complied with executive orders historically, and we are still attempting to do that now with President Trump's order. We'll move on and do that, whether or not we get a recommendation from that committee. We're also working on decommissioning or decertifying systems that should no longer be certified because of either they've aged out or nobody's using them. The things of that matter, they don't meet the guidelines any
Which I'm sure those
reason.
are security vulnerabilities.
Yes, of course. And a lot of times you'll find, like, for example, they have this voting village out in Las Vegas every year, the kind of a hackathon. And a lot of those machines are bought off of eBay and are old machines that don't actually meet the current requirements. And so they make a big splash in the news saying, you know, we've hacked into the voting systems, but they actually haven't used a current system that they've been able to hack into, which is kind of a current EAC certified system. But then we're also working on the citizenship question, which is we have authority over the National Voter Registration Form, which is every state is required to use that form, allow voters to register to vote on that form. And so we're working on getting citizenship, documentary proof of citizenship added to that form. There's a lot of resistance from the Democratic side of the aisle, so I don't know how we'll get that done at our commission because we are a bipartisan commission, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, and we need to have a 3-0 vote to pass anything. But we are working to comply with the order as best as we can and as quickly as we can. Not just that, but we're also working on increasing our visibility in the field to be able to go out and see whether the machines that are out and being used are still meeting the certification standards that they had gotten certified to. And there's a process called hash validation, and we have a team now who can go out and check the hash validations on the machines to make sure they're still up to date and still meeting the requirements and that nobody has hacked them, because if that hash is changed, then you know that somebody has tried to hack into the system. It's a very interesting way of checking the security of the voting systems. Then we're also working on setting new certifications for things that are election supporting technology. They're not like voting systems, but they're voter registration systems, electronic ballot delivery systems, election night reporting systems that are all connected to the internet. And so those are very much security risks because they are connected to the internet, whereas the voting machines are generally not connected. And I would say, with the exception of like Florida and Michigan, who use some technology at the end of the day to transmit their results, No, none of the machines in the country are actually voting systems connected. But with those other systems, voter registration, election night reporting, those are vulnerable because they are connected to the internet, and we're trying to set standards, national standards that can be tested against to make sure that those systems are secure. And we've just started out on that. Obviously, the government is shut down right now, but so our work is sort of paused, but we continue to work on that, and other things such as providing security recommendations to election officials, how to secure their systems both physically and cybersecurity recommendations as well, chain of custody procedures, auditing procedures, like how to do an audit, what kinds of audits are out there. And we're really trying to educate and train the officials on these things to help secure the systems that we use right now for elections.
That sounds all very valuable. Maybe could you explain a little bit about kind of how the EAC was established and what the structure is, so people can understand the function as well as what are you doing?
Well, our commission was created out of by the Help America Vote Act, which came just after the 2000 race between Bush v. Gore.
Right.
And there was a recognition that there was a lack of standards across the country on voting systems and on procedures. And of course, our elections are run on the local level, so each jurisdiction and state do things a little bit differently. But we also recognize that we needed to have some sort of a way to test the systems, and the Help America Vote Act created the Election Assistance Commission. Some of the tasks and responsibilities we had used to be in the Federal Election Commission. So we have two election commissions, the Federal Election Commission, the Election Assistance Commission. Federal Election Commission now only deals with campaign finance.
Right.
And our agency is solely focused on election administration. And they provided 4 commissioners, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. We are all named by a leader of the Congress. And they submit the names to the White House of the person they'd like to choose to be a commissioner. We go through extensive background checks, Senate confirmation, and then appointment by the president. So we are presidential appointees. And we work mostly, we have our main missions are setting guidelines for voting systems and testing and certifying those voting systems. We also distribute any money that Congress provides to the states. Those are called HAVA grants. And we distribute them. Our Office of our Inspector General audits all those funds to make sure that they're complying with federal regulations. And then we also have something called the National Clearinghouse of Election Administration, and that's an information source. We collect best practices and guidelines and guidance on how elections should be run, best processes for running elections. And of course, all that information is on our website. There's a lot of it, but we try to get it out to the election officials so that they can improve elections across the country.
And that's great, because I'm sure there's a lot of overturn within the states, new people coming up into the election administration positions who don't really know kind of best practices.
And there have been, especially recently, we had a big turnover in the last election of new election officials, which hadn't happened for a long time, but we had a big change, and so we had a big effort to train a lot of new people in election administration procedures and best practices for how they should do that.
Well, speaking of best practices, I know that a lot of elections administrators are dealing with how to deal with voter rolls.
Right.
So does the EAC have resources, recommendations when it comes to making sure voter rolls are accurate, transparent, up to date?
We
as
do.
Required by federal law?
Yeah, we do. Obviously, it's up to the states and the jurisdictions to keep their voter rolls up to date, because they are the ones who maintain the voter rolls for each state. We provide some guidance on best practices on how to do that. It's a very complicated issue. We have done recently a pilot with Experian, which is a commercial data source, a credit bureau, and that was a very eye-opening. It was a very helpful study. We piloted with a number of jurisdictions across the country of different sizes and different geographic locations, some states, some localities, and it was very helpful to see the accuracy of those of the commercial data to help them find voters that they might not have been able to find otherwise.
Yes.
So
yeah, that's something that the America First Policy Institute, our chair of our elections policy group, Ken Blackwell, he has been vocal about that, and as that is a new gold standard to kind of revolutionize the technology of maintaining accurate voter rolls.
Right.
Commercial data.
One of the problems is that people don't notify their election administrator that they're moving. And so we end up with names of people on the rolls who don't even live in those jurisdictions anymore. And it's difficult to know whether they're still in the jurisdictions or not. And so they send confirmation notices out, are you still at this address? And if it comes back a couple of times, then they can take them off, after 2 federal elections. It's a complicated process. Yes. But at least if you use commercial data, you can find out where people are. It's 95 to 99% accurate. Obviously, credit bureaus want to know where people are so they can go after them for debt collection or other reasons. But it gives the election official an ability to reach out to that voter and say, have you moved? Can I take you off the voter rolls? And if a voter says, oh, yes, you can take me off, you can just take them off the voter rolls. Otherwise, it's a long, complicated process to get them removed. And so it really helps reduce the cost to the election officials in determining who's a verified voter for their jurisdiction.
Yeah. Switching topics a little bit, I wanted to touch on the petition you mentioned for documentary proof of citizenship on the federal form. Can you talk a little bit about what that petition is, what it would require, what is the rulemaking process it's actually initiating, and where the status of that petition is? Right.
So there's a process in which somebody can petition a government agency to take a specific action, and AFPI and Ken Blackwell initiated a petition to the EAC for us to amend the National Voter Registration Form to require proof of citizenship. Right now, there's just a box to check on that form that says, under penalty of perjury, I claim that I am a U.S. citizen. And a lot of states have realized that that is not enough, that sometimes that box is left empty. They don't know if somebody's an actual citizen. Sometimes people get confused. They, apply to register to vote, and they think they should check that box even though they're not necessarily a citizen.
I can't imagine going to another country and
right.
trying to go through a form and what is this? I could understand it's an honest mistake to make.
It sometimes is an honest mistake, and it can actually hurt somebody who's trying to become a citizen of this country because they can get deported for something like that.
Right.
So, this process is that we put it out for comment through the Federal Register. Currently, we've received, according to the Federal Register, about 880,000 or so comments.
Do you know if that's kind of a typical range for petitions?
I think
like
it's a lot.
Okay.
I don't know. Generally, we don't do a lot of these petitions at the EAC. It's very rare for us to get a petition. But I would say, just looking at those comments, there's about 135,000 that are unique comments. When they get counted by the Federal Register, they are sometimes weighted because someone will write a comment in and say, I'm representing, 2,000 people on this comment. So they will count that as 2,000 comments. But we got 135,000, according to our General Counsel's office, unique comments, and that we will go through all those comments and summarize them, and then the commissioners will receive them, and then we will decide whether to have hearings and proceed further on rulemaking for that request. Okay. So right now that's where we stand. Unfortunately, because the government's closed, we don't have the personnel to go through the comments and summarize them. But once the government reopens, we will do that, and we will continue proceeding onto the next step of the rulemaking process.
Great. Well, I guess finally, so this Congress and this administration and this EAC, it seems that you're all aligned on wanting to improve election security and support the states. Is there anything that Congress and this administration can do to empower you to better, have that functionality?
Yeah, I think the EAC is in a unique position because we're the only federal agency that solely focuses on election administration. And we're also the only agency that actually has Republican representation equal to the Democrats. So it's important for us to have a say in elections and have some federal oversight. Without the EAC, we won't have any federal oversight, really. Not to say that there aren't some states that do a good job at this, but it is in the national interest that we make sure that voting systems are, certified and tested properly.
Absolutely.
And, I'm generally a fiscal conservative, but we need resources to do some of the things that we can do to improve elections. And that includes more visibility in the field, more training for election officials to make sure that they're complying with the law, to make sure that they are improving their processes as much as possible, that they're running things with security in mind, obviously transparency in mind, but they need some guidance. We have a wide range of resources and education in terms of election officials. A lot of that has to do with how big a jurisdiction is. We've got Los Angeles, which is the largest jurisdiction in the country with about 5 million voters, and that's larger than about 40 states. And then we have jurisdictions that have, 10 people voting. So there's a wide range of size of jurisdictions, and especially the rural jurisdictions need a lot of help. They have few resources. They need training. They aren't able to get away because they don't have the money to be able to go someplace to get training.
Right.
And so that's one thing that we're working on, is having some online training for folks who can't otherwise get training in improving their elections. So there's a number of things we're working on. Again, certifying equipment that needs to be certified, working on cybersecurity, working on physical security for the systems, and making sure that we're working on transparency so that we can run free and fair elections across the country.
Well, thank you so much for your time and joining us in the studio. We really appreciate it,
Happy
Commissioner
to do
McCormick.
so. Thank you so much.
Thank you.